Great. I want this to be a really honest conversation, not bashing faith, but about the lived experiences of growing up inside certain systems. You don't have to have everything figured out here. I'm just more interested in your experience than in your conclusions. So I'm here today talking to Miss Rachel Brennan, and about some of her experiences within the church and with purity culture. And so we just are so happy to have you. Welcome, Rachel.
Well, thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
So, when did you first start feeling that disconnect between what? So, wait, let's back up for a minute. So, you were raised in a Christian home, and then through different things that we'll talk about, have chosen a different lifestyle and a different way to raise your own child. So, when did you first start feeling that disconnect between what you were taught and then what real life and what you were really experiencing?
Well, I grew up as a member of the Lutheran Church and in a deep South conservative Texas town. And I always loved the routine of church and the music, and it was very, very much a formative part of my young childhood. And it wasn't until about fifth or sixth grade that I started noticing a very significant disconnect between what was being preached and what was in the Bible and how the community was behaving. And it just and this covered a wide gamut of things, including I was taught the story of the Good Samaritan and then listen to the adults pour coffee and talk around the coffee pot later about how food stamps were awful and we shouldn't be doing that for the hungry and the homeless. And so those kinds of disconnects started. And then as I got older and found more of these stories, these disconnects, like when when Jesus's followers went to him and said, "Hey, this woman has caused me to, leer at her in lust or whatever." Jesus's response was, "Well, you should pluck your eyes out." But the church was, you need to wear dresses this length. You need to not show cleavage. You need to be, dressed a certain way so that you are not tempting other people. And it was just very much at odds with everything I understood the basis of the faith to be.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I think that that is really true, is that somehow women now bear the brunt of being the gatekeepers for the men, not only in their lives, but that they see, right? Like, and the reality of that is that, you see these exhibitions every year about, in Marchish, that have, these are the clothes of women were wearing when they were raped, right? And there's sweatsuits, there's jeans, there's skirts, there's like all those different pieces. And so it just it just wears on my heart because so many women just carry that burden of I'm responsible for that. And I love also what you said about, who Jesus is. So, those who listen to me know that I call myself a red letter follower of Christ, right? Meaning, like in the Bible, back in the day, they used to only put the red letters of what Jesus said. Like that's who I am, and so I can really totally relate to coming from my own background of traditional Baptist to really realizing, what that looks like. So, what did you do with that tension then at the time? Did you put it down? Did you question it? Did you have any guilt feeling around it?
Well, I it became clear that you were not supposed to push back.
Hmm.
And if you ever said anything to someone else about, well, your behavior is not very Christ-like, or what you're asking of me is not very Christ-like, you got a lot of pushback about, well, you don't understand this, the church says this, and so I learned relatively early on that the pushing back was not useful or helpful.
Right? Which, and when you look at historical documents, when you look at even what the Bible says, his disciples push back all the time. Right? There's always that, pushback. There's always that questioning because are critical thinker people, or we should be critical thinkers. And, it's important to push back and learn kind of to process out what you believe as a person versus, what all the ideas and all the things that, are coming at you say. So, how did those messages shape the way that you saw yourself as a woman?
So the my experience growing up in the church was a little bit of a strange dichotomy in that my church determined that it was relatively liberal in the grand scheme of the area we were in the religion as a whole. For a couple of years, we had a female pastor, and like they really tried to lean into the we are accepting of everyone, and everyone has things to contribute and all of that. But that is not the way the behavior kind of fell out. And the way that I saw this most obviously was that women did the work and the caretaking in the church. So every time somebody needed to bake the bread that was going to be given at communion, or somebody needed to clean the church, or somebody needed, all of that work was done by women. Men were ushers, and sometimes they mowed the lawn, and they were ministers. And other than that, all of the rest of the work of caretaking for the community was done by women. And so that very much was kind of in my line of sight. And it's strange because so much of what you experience as an adult is all of these experiences layered on top of one another. So it's hard to look back and say, was this in and of itself a formative experience, or was it this combined with where I lived and like my family dynamics and all of that? How did these things come together to shape my adult life? And like I'm still working through all of this stuff in therapy.
Yeah.
And then the other way that I really saw it, and that I did not sit down and put together until yesterday when I was researching to answer your questions, was the stories that they chose to tell about women.
Hmm.
Because when you hear from the pulpit the story of Eve, who brought original sin and was the reason for pain and suffering, when you found, the Virgin Mary, whose value was being a vessel for the Lord, when you found, Ruth, where her contribution was utter devotion to her husband, because whereas thou goest, I will go. Those were the stories we were told. I never heard of Miriam, who was a prophetess, or Anna the prophetess. I never heard of Dorcas or Tabitha, who are known for good charitable works. There is a biblical woman, Hermione. Never heard her name before J.K. Rowling brought it up. She was
Right.
a healer who founded a hospital in Ephesus. Nobody ever told us these stories of these women doing incredible work. It was always the women are subservient or they are evil. And those are the two choices you have.
Yeah. Yeah. I know, it's amazing how like there's so many examples in historical documents as well as in the Bible of strong women who were pastors and leaders and all the things, doing incredible things. So so you were raised that this is who a woman is. This is how they serve, this is how their worth is. How did that shift to your intimate partnerships? You are currently married. How do you see yourself in that? Are you the primary bread, maker and all those different things? Do you share the partnership? What does that look like for you?
So I am sure that some of this experience in the church has impacted the fact that my love language as an adult is acts of service. To
Hmm.
do for others and provide for others is my way of showing love.
Yep.
Um, and the church definitely had an influence on that. How much I don't know, how much of that is just intrinsically my personality and that. But as a kid, God, I grew up in the church and I've been fat my whole life. Like I've always been heavy. And it was made abundantly clear that the things you had to offer in a relationship were physical beauty and purity and all of these things, none of which would have applied to me because I didn't look the way I was supposed to look. I hated dresses. I hated dress shoes. I didn't want to be the girly girl. I wanted to wear jeans and be active and all of that. So I never fit that look. And I think acts of service became how I compensated for what I saw as things that were flaws in myself. And even now, like as as a wife, I've been married to my husband for 15 years. We love each other very much. I have become an over functioner in that I take on the bulk of the difficult things in the relationship, even when it is to my detriment, and he has to stop me. So, like, we're a one car family. And if something happens and I need to rearrange my schedule to get my daughter somewhere, my immediate thought is, okay, I have to get up 2 hours early to drive you to work and then do this thing. And he will stop me and be like, no, I can just take the bus.
Right.
That's fine. You don't need to torture yourself to make sure nobody else's life is impacted.
Isn't it wonderful to have a partner who is able to like support you in that?
Yes, absolutely.
So, how did all that impact the way that you experience attraction, desire, and even confusion around your identity?
Um, it was strange because I never felt worthy of love or attraction. It's not a thing that I ever felt I was good enough to experience. And part of that was the church upbringing, and part of that was just cultural. I lived in a place where women wore a full face of makeup and big hair and dressed up to go to the grocery store. And like if you didn't try to, you know, portray the action of beauty, then you weren't it felt like you were not deserving of that. So it's been strange. And then when I moved, because I left Texas when I was like 24, and I moved to New York City, and it was a whole different world. Every culture that has ever existed on the planet is all there, all sharing the same space. And suddenly it didn't matter that I wasn't acting beautiful by Texas standards. I was just hot because I was wandering around New York City and there are 4 million men and some percentage of them are going to think you're hot. And
Yeah,
so, like,
I
it
love
just
that.
my perspective.
Yeah, yeah, that is awesome. So, going to New York City just was a huge change for you.
Yes, absolutely. It was a whole different world. And New York City, like, there's a lot of religion in the city. I know that in where I grew up and in some other places, they treat like big city life as very sinful, very, there
Yeah.
is there is a church on every corner. There are churches that are older than the state of Texas. There are so many religious people of every walk, and to be able to see firsthand with your own eyes
Mhm.
that what you grew up with is not necessarily the truth and that there are other options was really remarkable.
Yeah, it's so eye-opening. I know I was a nanny in New York City on Park Avenue for a brief period of time, and it was all those things. I come from a really small town in the Pacific Northwest, and to go from that to New York City was just so mind-boggling. I have so many amazing memories from there. And you're right, it just becomes I it really solidified in me the importance of I knew when I had kids that I was going to do everything I could to expose them to all those things as they grow up, whether it's traveling different places, whether it's doing different things, because really you don't get a really great sense of self until you've been exposed to a lot of different things and different ideas so that you can kind of form who you are as a person.
Oh yeah, and that's been a thing that we've done with our daughter for the first 10 years or so of her life. We really made it a point to experience all the things. We went to Diwali festivals and we went to synagogues and we went to Catholic church services and we exposed her to all of the things because I did not want her to grow up in a life where guilt was her primary motivator and
Yep.
where shame was how she determined who she was as a person
Yep.
because all of that is very deeply baked into many different types of and, branches of Christianity. And I just didn't want that for her. I wanted her to know that there were other choices.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know this statement will go against 95% of those who say that they're Christian, but I don't care. I'm going to say it anyway because it's my show. But I even take my kids to like pride festivals and different things like that that a lot of Christians are like, "Whoa, scary," right? But you need uh, people are people in my personal opinion, and you need to be exposed and have that connection to all different kinds of people. I have friends from every end of the spectrum, every religion, because I love people. And I just think it's important to have that exposure so that you as a child can figure out kind of who you are and can, really be solid. My kids now are young adults and both of them are very solid in who they are. One is extremely not, I would say he's pretty conservative. And then the other one is pretty liberal, and they live their lives. They know that they can come to me and talk to me about anything, and it's okay.
Yeah, and understanding that someone is not evil because they are different than you is so important.
Yep.
And so that's a big part of why we've exposed her to so many different things. And like this past October, we went to a big drag show at a local gay bar because my daughter's a teenager, she's old enough to like be able to do that.
Yep.
And while we were there, something had happened and my purse had tipped over and literally every credit card, my driver's license and everything had fallen out at the bar.
Oh
And
no.
they gathered them all up and they brought them to me.
Hmm.
Nobody even thought about stealing a credit card or stealing my identity or whatever. They came and found me to return my stuff.
Yeah.
And so it was so important to me for her to grow up seeing that this idea that the church puts forward that you are a sinner, you are a bad person if you do not adhere to these physical standards, these personality standards, these personal choices is not true.
Hmm.
And that these are trustworthy people who are just like you and me. They're just in big wigs and makeup.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, what would you say to the woman who's listening to you, the mom that's listening to you right now, and is feeling really stuck in that place right now? She's like, I don't know. Like, this is a really scary place to be because I'm gonna go to hell if I let go of some of those thoughts and feelings. Like, I can't associate with those that are in a drag show because, we just don't do that. What would you say to help her to have that first step to be a little bit more free?
Well, I would say that if you are feeling in your faith that you are not supposed to interact with drag queens, you're not supposed to interact with trans people, you're not supposed to interact with, whoever, remember that Jesus hung out with the tax collectors and the prostitutes, and like he surrounded himself with the people that were on the outskirts of society. That is the Christ-like choice,
Yep.
is to go and see the humanity in other people.
Yep.
And in addition, like, how can, and everybody has their own path, their own way. I'm not judging anybody else's choices, but for myself, how can I say, this is what I know to be true, this is my faith, this is who I am, if I don't know what the alternatives are?
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you are a mom or somebody who is looking at this and you're thinking, my church doesn't want me to interact with these people, or I don't feel like based on my political beliefs or my religious beliefs that these people are not good. Do, do you know that? Have you talked to them? Have you had lunch with them? Like
Yeah.
that's what Jesus would do.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that. So there is, in talking to you and listening to you, there is a little bit of a gap from where your parents are and where they raised you and where you are now. So how much do you share about your life and things like how do you have those conversations with your parents when you are on opposite ends of the spectrum in a lot of ways?
Realistically, I don't.
Hmm.
I talk to my parents a few times a year. We send cards for holidays, we make phone calls for birthdays and stuff, but I have not been home for a holiday in 16, 17, 18 years
Oh, wow.
because we are so different, and not just religiously different. If it was just a difference of faith, that wouldn't be the problem. But my family is very, very, very conservative, right wing, like politically and just in who they are. And I don't say this as an insult. They are good people, but
Yeah.
this is their belief structure, their political beliefs. And I swing so far the other way that like Bernie Sanders would probably think I'm a little too leftist. And so it's one of those things where like I feel like I can't tell my parents things about myself because it would hurt them. Not because I'm afraid that they would judge me, but because I'm afraid that they would be sad and worried about my soul or my choices or what have you. And I don't want that for them.
Yeah.
So we maintain a tenuous relationship and do the best we can in ways where we try not to hurt each other.
How does that feel as a daughter, though, to be able to not share every part of your life with the parents that you know love you unconditionally, but it just is too much of a struggle?
It's hard. And I have gone so far the other way to make sure that my daughter knows that there is nothing she could ever say or do or think or feel that would make me think any less of her. And so that she feels comfortable coming to me with big things, big issues. And she has. And I always try to approach it with, oh my God, this is wonderful because it's you.
Yep.
And even if I don't necessarily think it's right or great or I don't agree with it, that doesn't matter because it's not me, it's her. And so it's hard not being able to share with family, but I feel like I've managed to land as best I can in maintaining a relationship that is stable and secure by minimizing the amount of contact that we have.
Yep.
And that seems to work for now.
Got you. So, how would you feel if your daughter grew up and the opposite happened, right? That she became so much like your parents. What would you do to continue to build that gap?
I would say as long as she wasn't actively hurting people, we can have a conversation. We can talk about things. And I want to hear her perspective. Maybe she could change my mind.
Yeah.
Maybe I could change hers. There's always a conversation to be had.
Yep.
When it feels like it is difficult or like there is a point at which love will be taken away,
Mhm.
that it becomes an untenable relationship. So yeah, whatever she does, whatever she thinks, whoever she decides to be, I want to be a part of that.
Yeah, I love that. So do you feel like there are certain people or that you either encounter like in the coffee store shop or people that come into your life that you feel like you have to pull back and you can't be completely yourself?
Not in a long time. I have worked really hard to curate a life where I don't have to hide parts of myself from anybody except for my parents and my brother. Like that's outside of those three relationships, if you have issues with what I think or who I am or what I feel, that's great. You don't belong here in my
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
And I want the best for you. I just want it over there and not in my sphere.
Yeah, but it seems like you also are pretty open to other views and, as long as they're not actively harming or actively coming against you, you are able to have that discussion.
Yeah, I'm happy to have that discussion. I'm happy to have those conversations. And I don't want anybody to feel like they are not welcome here.
Mhm.
But there is a limit to what I will accept as pushback and what I will accept as to be a regular part of my life.
Yeah. I could totally respect that. So let's shift gears a little bit because I think a lot of the women that are listening to this series in particular, that purity culture and that, putting women where they are, where they're supposed to be is, servant, serving everybody and making the bread and making all the house calls and doing all the that we talked about really affects their marriages. So I was talking to a woman today who was very sexually promiscuous before she got married. And she carries the guilt and shame in her marriage that how dare I didn't save myself from my partner. Then I have women that I've talked to all week that have like went through the purity culture piece and they feel guilty about enjoying sex, and because it's really about pleasing your partner, it has nothing to do with anything that I shouldn't get. I mean, if I get pleasure, great. That's an overflow of making sure that he is taken care of, right? So we have both ends of the spectrum, women who are feeling guilt and shame in their marriage and not able to have that deep intimate relationship that was designed and it is all for women, right? So let's talk a little bit, jumping off that, let's talk a little bit about your relationship. So, how did the early belief systems that you had and that you grew up with, how in sex and intimacy and all those pieces, how did they show up once you were actually in a long-term marriage?
So, I will say sex and physical intimacy really saved me mentally, um, prior to being in the relationship with my husband, because I grew up with this, I am not good enough, I will never have anything to offer. And once I worked through that and got to a point where somebody wanted to be with me,
Yep.
it kind of opened my eyes to, oh my God, no, this is fine. What I bring to the table is fine. And I do still struggle with, over functioning and over like trying to provide for other people in that way. But yeah, if I'm not having a good time, I don't know that you can have a good time, because this is a two-way street. The teeter-totter has to swing both ways, you know?
Yeah.
Uh,
Exactly, exactly. So, did you have a hard time because of how you felt about yourself initially when you went into the intimacy of your marriage? Did you like in the back of your head were you thinking, "Oh my gosh, how can he love this? This is not, like I'm not beautiful, I'm not worthy, I am, I'm not, girly girl, I'm not all the things that you grew up with." Did you have to deal with that when you first got married or first got with your partner?
No, my husband is a wonderful man, and one of the things that he brings to the table is an absolute vocal appreciation for everything about me and my physical self.
Nah.
And there is never a moment where I am worried that he is not attracted to me or that he is not good with my body. And he's very, very clear all the time, physically and verbally that, yeah, he's into this. This is what he signed up for. And so that works out so great. And it's been such an incredible gift to receive from a spouse. And for the last several years, I've been kind of dealing with some health stuff that popped up. And as part of that, I gained like 60 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
He never had a word to say. He loved my body no matter what size it was, no matter how much weight I gained. At this point, I'm on the downswing of losing all that weight because I've solved those health problems. He doesn't care. He really,
Uh,
truly does not care. As long as he can grab my butt in the kitchen, he is happy. Like
I
that's
love
all he
that.
needs.
I love that. I think that is every woman would like to have that in a relationship, but I think it also takes that accepting someone who is giving you that as, like I am worthy to be loved in a way that is completely whole versus like, oh my gosh, he loves me like this, but does he not see this, this, and this? I think too often as women, we pick apart who we are and really our husbands are all in, our partners are all in.
Yeah, it can be hard for some people to accept that somebody else can love all the things you don't like about yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it is it's something that takes some time and some like wrapping your brain around it.
Mhm.
And I'm not going to say that there aren't times when I feel like, you know what, should we maybe turn off the light so I don't have to think about the fact that you can see me? Like Those moments, like, they live in the back of your brain, and you just have to trust that if your partner didn't want to see you, they wouldn't be there.
Yeah. And I love what you said that it's like a mutual thing, right? It's a two-way street. You come with your love and appreciation for him, his body, and everything that he is, and he comes with love and appreciate for you and your body and whatever that looks like. And it's not this nitpicky, whether we're doing it to yourselves, whether we're doing it to others, like I appreciate you. I want to be with you. Well, I appreciate you too, right? And it just creates such beautiful harmony.
And it's so necessary because bodies change, people change over time. I would be so upset if I were in a relationship with someone and I was worried that if I had to have a mastectomy that they wouldn't love me,
Yeah.
or that if he had erectile dysfunction problems, he was afraid I wouldn't love him. That to me is the worst feeling, to think that I don't love you enough to love all of you and accept that your body is going to change over time. And like, I am adamant that to have a strong, healthy relationship, you have to be with somebody who is going to love you, even if you are just a brain in a jar, like that Steve Martin movie from the 80s. Like, you have to be with somebody who's going to love all of that about you.
Yep. I totally agree. I totally agree. So, when you stepped away from the church, what value did you keep for yourself that obviously has you've been able to bring to this relationship?
So, for me, as far as like values from the church that I kept, like a lot of it was fairness and equitable like contributions to things, and that's both on a personal individual scale and on a much larger societal scale. Um I could not be in a relationship with someone if I felt I was doing 100% of the work and they were just kind of there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is, I think, something that I definitely brought from the faith because, you know, I feel like Jesus was very clear. You have to contribute, but you're part of a larger society. His disciples all worked together to do the things
Yep.
that needed to be done. There was nobody who was just like kicking it and watching Jesus and the other 11, you know,
Yeah.
be
Well,
very
I
busy.
I think that is such a beautiful piece that you brought from that piece of your life to today, right? Is that conclusion that, Jesus went to the places that nobody else wanted to go, right? He and so did his disciples. They went into places that the Pharisees and Sadducees of the day, the religious people of the day were like, whoa, scandalous. We don't talk to those people, right? And yet they did. And you brought that and you so beautifully, I think, model that to your daughter of we go to, drag show, we go to, the Catholic Church, we go to the synagogue, we go to different things because we are people and we love people.
Yes, absolutely. And it is so important to me that I mean, I am a introvert who really loves people in community, which is kind of this weird dichotomy because I want my community to be happy and whole and functioning, and I want to be in my house and watch that. Like, that seems awesome.
Yeah.
But that's just so much of what we do, and my values are the same no matter what faith I am a part of.
Yeah.
And I feel like, it's one of those things where um like, just living your values is so important. Like, we have, over the last 5 or 6 years, we have housed 3 different people who were dealing with homelessness because caring for our community is important to us.
Yeah.
And so having my daughter see that and live that and know that care for community is important, that's a thing that I took from the church, I think.
That's so powerful. That's so powerful. So when you look at your daughter, what feels most important for her to know about herself?
Um, I want her to know that God and spirituality and those things aren't found in a chapel. They're in your heart, they're in nature, they're in your community. And I want her to know that there is nothing about her or her body that is inherently wrong or bad or sinful. The way she dresses, or whether she wears makeup, or whether she shaves her legs, or those are things she does for her, that she should do for her, not because society or religion told her to.
Yep.
Those are the things that I want her to really keep inside of herself.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what do you want to protect her from that you maybe have experienced?
The thing that I want for her to be protected from is the experience that you are never enough.
Mhm.
And this is the thing that I've experienced kind of in the church, but also just in day to day life where you're trying so hard to meet somebody else's needs, to meet somebody else's expectations of what they want you to be or to look like. And no matter what you do, you're never going to be good enough. And
Yeah.
I want to protect her from those situations where you give and give and give and give, and it's never appreciated or accepted or enough on the other end.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, I love that. That I think you're right. That is true, not only in the church, but in our society as a whole. Like that is just so true. So, how do you plan to talk about things like body relationships and identity differently with her? But she's a teenager now, right? So she
Yeah, she is.
probably is in the midst of all that because teenagers like right when you really solidify the things that you take from your childhood that you take as your own versus all the ideas that are coming towards you and at you, trying to filter those and figure out what is true. So, what do you have you about her body talk to her about her body, and what do you plan on reaffirming as she goes through that process?
Well, we have talked to her about her body and human bodily functions and all of that from the time that she was old enough to have words.
Mhm.
Like these are conversations we've been having at age appropriate levels
Yep.
for forever. And like even as a tiny child, um, sometimes when she would have to come into the bathroom with me when we were little, and I would have to, change a pad or whatever. And she would say, "What's going on?" And rather than being like, "Oh no, no, that's gross. Don't think about that," I would say, "Well, you know what? Sometimes when you're a grown up lady, sometimes your vagina makes a mess once a month, and you just have to clean it up." And so, as a 3-year old, she had an understanding of what menstruation was and what a period was at a level that was acceptable for her.
Yep.
We continue to have those conversations with her now about, you know, bodily autonomy and consent and about all of these important things that she needs to know. And we talk a lot about watching how other people do things and deciding whether or not you think that that's good or fair or right for your own life. And she has been dealing with a problem that's kind of unique to her generation where everybody has a phone. So everybody has a camera. And now AI is showing up. So you can make fake AI videos of people doing all sorts of things as long as you have a picture of them. And so we're dealing with not letting other people's taking weird pictures of you in school or whatever and not letting that bother you because they caught you at a weird angle. Like don't freak out and don't think less of yourself and hate yourself because they got a picture of you blowing your nose in English class or whatever. And we continue to move forward with that, but as just not letting other people's opinions dictate how you feel about your body or what you do with it.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like you really have given her that sense of self from the time she was little and really been able to have some of those conversations. I think that that is so important that you have to have those conversations so that, in the day to day, so that when the big things come up, they feel comfortable talking to you. So, what would you say to the mom who's like, oh my gosh, I screwed up, right? Like, I need to have those conversations. And so now I'm as a teenager, I'm really struggling with how I can talk to my teen. What would you say to her?
Honestly, I would say try to have conversations in ways that don't feel aggressive or pointed or blaming. Try to, you know, have conversations in the car so you don't have to look at each other when you're talking about these things, because now you got to make up that time. Have conversations about fictional characters. Talk about this character on this TV show. What did they do? And why would I do something different? Like try not to make it feel like they are being blamed or judged for themselves. And just, as long as they know you love them, the conversation will be better than you think it is.
Yeah. I always tell parents all the time about the car situation because you don't have to look at one another. But I have not even thought of the fictional character one. I'm gonna use that one. That one's going in my tool belt.
Good. I'm
Okay,
glad.
final question. So, what is something that you wish more people felt permission to question?
I feel like I wish people felt permission to question authority, but not like in a like I'm not being like all George Orwell about it, but just because somebody says something to you doesn't make it true. Just because it's your boss or your minister or your mom or whoever, don't instinctively just think of things as well. If Pastor so and so says, then that's probably accurate. And do the research for yourself.
Yeah.
Like I will remind people that when Martin Luther wanted to free the German people from the corruption of the Catholic Church at the time, the very first thing he did was he translated the Bible into German so the average person could read it.
Yep.
That information is out there for you. Don't let other people's interpretation of stuff dictate your decisions.
Yep. Yep. I love that. I love that. That's so good. Wow. So much good stuff today. I'm so glad that you came and saw us today. Thank you for being a guest on the Unchecked Moms Alliance.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I have loved this. This has been so good.
So I know that you have your own podcast. Will you, for those women who are like, oh my gosh, this woman really resonates with me. I need to talk to her too. Will you, shoot me the link to your podcast so that I can put it in below and people can click on it and check it out?
Absolutely, I will. It's called Real Stories, Real Problems, real REEL, and then REAL for the second one, because every week my good friend and I watch a documentary and then we talk about it. And it typically has a financial bent, but we're so funny and we're so eloquent and we have so much to say. And we would so love to have you join us in our conversations. But yes, I will absolutely shoot you a link to the podcast so that you can share it with everybody.
I love it. All right. Everybody, make sure you continue to watch. We have several more episodes in this series. Continue to watch, and I will talk to you soon.